Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. It turns out the 5 families of New Capenna want you to play 3 colored decks. But we all know that as budget players, that can put a big strain on our very limited wildcard supply, particularly if you're in your first year. So, what's a budget player to do? I'm glad you asked, because we're going to talk about budget alternatives for your mana base and how to build a 0 wildcard 3 color mana base for standard that gives you a worthwhile edge in the standard field. But before we get into all that, what do you say we do the awkward thing and promote the channel? Allow me to take this opportunity to invite you to subscribe to the Planeswalker Stronghold for all your new player, free-to-play, budget, and midweek Magic needs. As you can see, we aren't one of these huge channels that fluctuates tons of subscribers on any given day and doesn't even notice. Around here, you matter. Just like these fine folks here, who recently subscribed to the channel and chose to make their subscription public. You see, the YouTube algorithm seems to think that budget arena content doesn't matter. And while I know I can't change that, I think we can. So click the subscribe button to support the channel, and tap the bell icon so you don't miss on an upload, and build a more efficient collection along the way. Now, what were we talking about? Oh, right. So the question remains, how do you build a 3-color deck without having a very intense amount of rare, specifically lands, increasing the cost of your deck? This is from the recently popular Naya Runes deck, and as you can see, we're just looking at the 23 card mana base. It's only running 4 basic lands, and forget about rares or mythics for your deck. This needs 10 rares just for the mana base, and this is a pretty budget example. As you can see, you're running 7 of the tempo common mana fixers. 9 of them. So this definitely could be even more. You could be looking at as many as 17, 18, 19 rare lands just for your mana base. The mana base for Esper Control paints a similar picture. Again, just running 6 basic lands. This is also running Jawara Disruption as part of its counterspell package, but I'm going to count it as part of the mana base because you do sometimes run it that way. But even with that, you're only running 9 budget lands. You are, however, running 11 rare lands on a 26 land package. So nearly half your lands are rare. So what's a budget player to do? Okay, so obviously the most effective way to create a 3-color mana base is through the rare dual lands. Now, currently the new player experiences for the 2022 class consist of the pathways. You've got at least 1 copy of each of these, but they have some downsides when it comes to creating a 3-color mana base, and I, for one, will be very happy when they rotate out for that reason. The downside being that these are the dual mode lands, so when you play it, you have to decide, are you going to play it as a white mana source or as a black mana source. And as long as it remains in play, that's all it is to you. So for instance, a Bright Climb Pathway is basically just a plains once it comes into play. Similarly, Grime Climb Pathway is really just a swamp by any other name. Now, when the 2023 class of new player experience decks come out, I fully expect they're going to be replaced by the Innistrad lands. These are a little more versatile and a little more functional when it comes to those 3-color mana bases, because once it comes into play, it produces white or black in this case. So you're not locked in once you make the decision. And if it comes into play on turn 3, you don't even have a tempo issue. The Midnight Hunt features the 5 ally pairs, and Crimson Vow features the other 5 enemy pair lands. From there, of course, we'd have to talk about the new cycle of, well, I'm still going to call these triomes, even though that's really not what we're seeing. But each of these 5 lands in Standard represents a 3-color wedge of ally pairs. That is certainly the most on-target way to create a 3-color mana base, but the land does come into play tapped. So you're either giving up turn 1, turn 2, in order to be on curve for turn 3 for a 3-color piece, or later in the game you're having to take a little bit of a tempo hit. This is somewhat offset by the fact that you have a cycle 3 on this, so if you do draw it late game and you don't need it, you can always cycle it away and potentially draw a more useful at the moment card. While the rare lands are certainly the most effective way of constructing a 3-color mana base, they also are the least budget friendly. Now when it comes to uncommons, and please note from this point forward I'm just going to be talking about future Standard, so the 2 Innistrad sets, Kamigawa and Streets. I don't see the point of talking about 3-color mana base in sets that obviously were not designed with that in mind. But again, the uncommons really aren't doing a lot as far as mana fixing. The one exception to that being Secluded Courtyard is good for some sort of tribal mana fixing, and could produce all 5 colors. But I'm not sure a 3-color tribal deck really exists at this point, but that may be something we explore through the course of the next budget year. When it comes to other uncommons, we really didn't pick up a lot here either. There are some things like Alluring Suitor and Kessig Naturalist that do produce mana but don't really change the color of that mana. Glittering Stockpile basically lets you bank a bunch of mana for future use, but all of that mana then has to be used in 1 color, and it's kind of a one-shot deal, so trying to use this to work around a 3rd color in your deck is probably not hugely beneficial. Azusa's Many Journeys does allow you to play additional lands, but of course that's just helping you get your mana base down, not really fixing it. From there, probably our best hope in a 3-color mana base, of course, lies in green, Reclusive Taxidermist. This little human druid does allow it to tap for 1 mana of any color, and since it's a 2-drop, really puts it on point for that crucial turn 3 where you're going to start playing those 3 mana spells. From there, I think that is really about it when it comes to the uncommons. And that brings us to the common lands, and boy do we have a lot of options here. We've got the ally pair sack to draw a card, tempo lands from the new Streets of Capenna. Very, very nice little lands there. They are tempo lands, as many of these are, so it is worth some consideration there. Also, let me see here, the life lands like Tranquil Cove, also a tempo loss, as is kind of the expectation when it comes to common land mana fixing, but both of them do allow you to tap for either color of mana once it's in play. From there, we have Uncharted Haven. This one coming to us from Kamigawa. It also comes into play tapped, and you have to choose a color, but it could be any of the 5 colors. So if you're looking for an early addition to your mana bases, this one's pretty nice because they're not color specific. This could be any 2 or 3 color deck to try and help smooth that out. A very nice addition to your collections. And of course, let's not forget about our new friends, the family lands. As these come into play, they automatically sacrifice and search up one of 3 basic land types, that being the family's 3 allied lands. It also gains you a life as it comes into play, something that we're seeing more and more often at the common base land mana fixers. Of course, we also have our old friend Evolving Wilds available to us in either of the Innistrad sets. These work very similarly, except you control when it's sacked, and it does go get a basic land card of any type and put it into the battlefield. No life gain here, though. So for a little more versatility on what type of land that you're getting, you are giving up that life gain. And I know that you have copies of Evolving Wilds, even if you have not opened a single pack of either of the Innistrad sets, because they were in the 2022 class of New Player Experience decks, and I fully expect them to remain there for the 2023 class. We also have some non-land commons that we need to consider. In blue, it's mostly restricted use mana, which really doesn't serve our purposes. Let me see here. Goldhound, of course, creates treasure, and we'll talk about treasure here in just a moment. Famished Foragers, it just creates more red mana, so it's really not part of the conversation. Jumping down for a moment to take a look at the artifacts. Obviously, Honored Heirloom and Network Terminal are probably the most versatile options, but seeing as they are a 3-drop themselves, it almost starts cutting into the purpose of the deck, because turn 3 is really where we want to have access to that color, not just setting that up. Also, Jack-o'-lantern, if you're running a deck that is primarily 2 colors and really just splashing a 3rd color for a couple very significant relevant cards, Jack-o'-lantern might be your answer. As it's just a 1-drop, often people aren't doing anything on their turn 1 anyway, unless you're running a very aggressive aggro style deck. Or creating other mana things like Llanowar Elves or something like that. This also has the option to draw you a card, as well as create a mana fix 1 time from the graveyard. So again, if you're just splashing a couple of cards, this might be a good answer. Otherwise, I think it's a lot of tempo loss. That also brings up our common mana fixers. Each of these is slightly different, but what they share in common is the phrasing 2 mana and exile this card from your hand target land gains tap add one of 3 different colors of mana until Mass Bandits is cast from exile. You may cast it from exile as long as it remains in exile. So these are very decent cards as far as creating that early play. So you could easily spend turn 1 doing whatever you want, and then on turn 2 fix that land or one of your 2 lands to produce now arguably the 3rd color of mana, which is kind of the same as dropping a tempo common land onto the battlefield. So really, these are going to come down to how good the individual creatures fit the deck archetype. Rakish Ravelers, when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. I think green-white citizen splashing red is a very solid option. And really getting 6 power and 4 toughness onto the battlefield for 5 mana after it's done fixing your mana is pretty cool. So I think all of these have a strong potential depending upon the individual deck that you're trying to build. And as promised, treasure is a thing in the New Capenna set, although we really didn't see it in the other 3 sets this year. Under City Scrounger gives you the option to create treasure tokens as your creatures or your opponent's creatures die. Let's see here. Goldhound, of course, is a treasure in and of itself, as is Gilded Pinions. I think this has some potential in a colorless deck. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but it is something I'm looking at for next budget year. And of course, Halo Scarab. This gives you functionality from your graveyard and creates treasure. Basically for the cost of 2 mana, so it's a nice late game mana sink, maybe to ramp into that 5th mana, 6th mana that you might need. Sticky Fingers, honestly, I'm not sure about this yet. Obviously, it's pretty good in limited, but I'm not sure about the standard environment, if this is the sort of thing we're going to want to be running. Exhibition Magician can just create a treasure when it comes into play. Human Wizard, I don't know. I think this has more impact in Historic or Explorer, where the Wizard archetype in red is a little more prevalent. I'm kind of playing around with deck lists there to see if it finds a slot, but that deck is also pretty well established. And the idea that this could also make a green-white citizen creature token is somewhat lost on that deck. Jewel Thief is phenomenal if you're looking to run treasure. I think this is very, very awesome, particularly if you have the ability to protect your Jewel Thief with Most Wanted. That's actually something I'm looking at for a popper style deck. I think the vigilance and trample on that backed up with a Most Wanted, and if the creature does eventually die, you get an extra treasure token. Just seems potentially broken there, something I want to play with. Glittermonger is, well, kind of underwhelming, and I think something that is arbitraged out to the limited environment. I can't see this having much of an impact on standard. So let's try applying what we just talked about to a theoretical mana base for a green, white, and red deck. The first thing we want to do is start with each of the pathways for the appropriate colors, and from there, let me switch this around here. Let's look at all the things that potentially add mana. I think one of the more relevant pieces is going to be the sacrifice lands. And why isn't it pulling up? Aha, because I didn't have not collected. There we go. So if we go right in here, why is it not coming up? All right, sorry for the slight break there. Had to figure out why Arena was not doing what I wanted it to do. The Cabaret Court, I think adding 3 copies of that to your mana base is definitely worth considering. Another thing that you might want to look at is Ominous Parcel. I think this is a bit of tempo loss that's not really worth it. The Ecologist Terrarium, on the other hand, I do think this is a card, at least for the colorless deck, might be a thing to do, but I think in this build it probably is not. And now we get into more specific things about the deck. I think this particular deck is going to be more of a citizen build with a slight splash of red. So Botanical Plaza is a card that I am interested in running a couple of copies of for that late game card draw. Similarly specific, I think the Wreckish Revelers is pretty good for this style deck, needing just the 1 red mana to play and adding a significant board state to allow you to have that late game finish. If you don't have better rare or mythic finishers at that level, I would recommend running 2, perhaps 3 copies depending upon what else you've got going on in the deck. So with those assumptions in mind, this is basically what I would suggest as a budget mana base for a primary 2-color splashing third for a budget deck of 3 colors in standard. That is 2 slots for the common creature mana fixer, 6 and 6 of your 2 primary mana colors, as well as 2 of the draw a card tempo commons. From there, I'd go 3 basic lands of your splash 3rd color, 3 copies of the appropriate sack land for the family, as well as 1 each of the rare dual lands. And of course, post-rotation, these would be the Innistrad dual lands, which I think is an even better mana base for this style of deck. But at this time, these are the 3 rare dual lands that I know you have, depending upon the individual colors.
Alright, so with all that having been said, don't forget, smash the like button like Hulk would. And of course, comment and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I hope you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Super secret tech time. If you've made it all the way to the end, comment down below and let me know where you're watching this video from. And until next time, I'll see you in the arena.